Hi guys, welcome to today's video. My name is Gabby and today we're going to be talking about postpartum depression. I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my story and some things that I think will help, some tips and tricks that I think would help me this time around. So I have had one baby, so that's all the experience that I have. So that's just what I'm speaking from. So the first thing that I will say is that my mother-in-law came to stay with me about a month before I gave birth. She lived out of state, so she came to stay with my fiance and I, leading up, to the birth. The second thing I'll say is that my fiance had, I can't remember exactly how long he'd been there. I think it had been less than 2 months for sure that he had been at a new job that he had started, and the new job was first of all we needed to have income because I was going to have to take about 2 weeks. I took 6 weeks total off and 2 weeks of that was going to be unpaid, so he needed to have a job and income so obviously we could pay our bills. And I don't blame him for this at all, but because of the fact that he was brand new to this job pretty much and didn't have any seniority or anything, he was only able to take off 2 days for the birth of our child. And unfortunately, he couldn't stay with me any longer than that. The company that he worked for, thank God he does not work for them anymore. So I know that will, factor into the second birth and how things happen, I guess. But yeah, this company was awful. It did not give him any more than 2 days. And so I actually went in to be induced on, it was a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. and I did not end up having my son until Wednesday night at 8:18 p.m. So those were his 2 days. So at 4 a.m. on Thursday, he had to go back to work. So in the middle of the night when I was hemorrhaging and things like that, I felt like I couldn't wake him up just to be there with me because he had to work. So the feelings of being alone and things like that played into the postpartum depression pretty much started instantly. He wasn't there to take me home from the hospital. His mother had to do that. So yeah, so that happened. He couldn't be there. Whatever. So I gave birth, like I said, Wednesday night, and I believe Keith's mom left that Friday or Saturday. So she was there with me for a few days, but at that time she wasn't helpful. It was more because I had feelings of like not being good enough, things like that. I felt very judged and stuff, so her being there was not helpful. Secondly, we allowed a lot of people to come over right away to the hospital and the room, or I'm sorry, to the hospital and to our home, and I felt like I always had to have my house clean, myself looking presentable enough, and it caused a lot of just like overexerting myself when I shouldn't have been. And so, yeah. And then also the first couple to the pediatrician that we had, I was by myself with my son for the first time. So obviously feeling all those feelings of the anxieties of being a first-time mom and making sure I do everything right. And I had my son in the middle of January, so it was slippery and snowy and icy outside, and I was just driving a little cruise at the time, which aren't the best in the snow. And I also was traveling to Flint, Michigan, which aren't the best roads. So anyway, I just had a lot of fears about driving, getting there, and then once we got there, if you've ever taken a child to a pediatric appointment, the questions they ask are so crazy, and not crazy, just like they ask a lot. And at the time, I felt very overwhelmed in all parts of my life. And so those questions really, like, I don't know, just like triggered something in me, I guess, that it just made me feel like a terrible mom if I didn't know the answer to them, or if I felt like the looks on their faces when I responded were a little off. And sometimes doctors, I guess, are desensitized to certain situations, and so sometimes their responses aren't very sensitive. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just usually left the doctor's appointments feeling like a terrible mother, and like I didn't know what I was doing, and that I was actually causing more harm to my child than good. Um, so yeah. And then yeah, just all those things combined, and then being home by myself with a new baby for 6 weeks, it was just a lot. I didn't feel like I could ask for help. I didn't know if I wanted help. Um, I just didn't know what was best for me at that time and what would help my mental space. I was too scared to go anywhere. And also, my fiance was the only one working, so money was really tight. So I felt like I couldn't go anywhere or spend any type of money because I didn't want me going, just taking my son through the drive-through or something stupid, and like obviously like having to pay for that gas. I didn't want that to be a reason that we couldn't pay a bill. So we just stayed home. Just thinking about it again is just very tough. It was really hard. Anyway, I so we just stayed inside for 6 weeks basically. Um my family lives pretty far away as well, so um I I don't even I think I could probably count on one hand the amount of times that I was able to see my family. And then also, people obviously come over to see your baby. So I felt a little neglected because I had gone through, first of all, my pregnancy in general was pretty traumatic. Like the whole 9 months, and then giving birth is traumatic. So I felt like I had gone through all these things, and people just wanted to come over and cuddle my baby. Um, so it was really hard. Those feelings of loneliness are pretty heavy. And then, so I went back to work. March 2nd was my first day back at work. And I felt good. I went to work for 2 weeks, and every morning I was breastfeeding or pumping at the time, so I would get up early enough to actually put myself together. I felt amazing having a little, getting out of my house and going to work and being part of society again. And then March 16th, so exactly 2 weeks later, is when we went into lockdown for the pandemic. So I was working from home, and I didn't feel like I could send my son to daycare. Oh, he wasn't in daycare, he was just being watched by family. But because he was so small, I didn't feel like I could send him away. So he stayed at home with me while I worked from home. And it was, again, a lot just being home, even without a child. Like, even now to this day, I struggle with being home, working from home. I just can't do it. So it was a lot, and I fell again into a depression. And like, if my son were crying or having a bad day, I felt these feelings of resentment towards him, and I would just, at some point in the day, would just like let him cry. And then when my fiance would get home from work, I would just pass him off. As soon as I heard my fiance in the driveway, I would literally just go in my room, shut the door, and just could not be bothered because I was just, and now I hate myself for doing, at the time I hated myself for doing that. I never want to feel those type of feelings towards my own son. I never want him to feel like he can't express himself, or he couldn't be sad, or anything. But anyway, I had heard about postpartum depression obviously before, and I told my fiance while I was pregnant because I just knew because I don't know what it was. I just knew that it was going to be really hard for me. So I told him like ahead of time, like, please research postpartum depression. I'm going to need help. My mental health is probably going to suffer, and I just need you to understand that and be there for me. And he did, but I mean, he could only be there for me to a certain extent, you know? So yeah, that was, you know, kind of my story. And now